Welcome to the TechMobility Podcast.
I'm Ken Chester, and as usual, we have a full docket waiting, so let's get started. On the docket, solar-powered planes take flight, the feds look into the sale of driver data by the automakers, and the farmland to forest movement attracts investment. To add your voice to the conversation, be it to share an opinion, ask a question, or even suggest an idea for a future topic, call or text the TechMobility hotline. That number, 872-222-9793, or you can email the show, talk@techmobility.show, and that is talk@techmobility.show. And be sure to check us out on social media and wherever you enjoy podcasts, because we can be found on some 20 or more different podcast platforms. And that includes Apple Podcast, that includes iHeart, that includes Spotify. So pretty much anywhere that you find podcasts, you will find us. Be sure to check us out. From the TechMobility News Desk, Michigan DOT initiates smart highway pilot testing. With the evolution of all this tech in cars, the internet, AI, everything going on, there's been a move afoot over the last 10 years, and it's gathering steam at state level, to actually make the infrastructure communicate with vehicles. The whole purpose of it is that if vehicles had more information relative to road conditions, be it traffic, weather, delays, accidents, anything like that, that it would, number one, be good for traffic patterns because they would now have choices, and two, be good for drivers because it would be safer. You would know things ahead of time and maybe could avoid it, particularly if the infrastructure was able to give you alternative routes to get around these situations. In Michigan, they're doing this. It's going to take 3 to 5 years, and it's the first stage of what they're calling a smart highway pilot. And it's operational on Interstate 94 between Ann Arbor and Detroit. I've been on Interstate 94 across the great state of Michigan. That is a pretty intense corridor because if you're going east-west, basically, if you're traveling from Chicago to Detroit by car, you are going across 94, no doubt. So there's a lot of traffic there. The project is using a 3-mile stretch of one westbound lane that runs through Van Buren Charter Township. Technology along the roadway can communicate with systems in the connected and autonomous vehicles. Well, to the point about autonomous vehicles, and we haven't talked about them lately, testing's still going on, people. While the promise of the autonomous car is still, yes, years away, they haven't completely abandoned it yet. And they're still doing testing and planning and trying to work out the bugs. The simplest way to think about it, it's a road that's observing all kinds of risk factors on the roadway and what's happening on the roadway. And this came from Tyler Duvall, CEO and co-founder of Cavnu, the company that's building the road to MichiganPublic.org, that interview. The lane will interact with what the industry calls Level 2 Advanced Driver Assistance Systems vehicles. These are vehicles with adaptive cruise and lane assist technology. And if you were listening last week, I actually pointed out these two technologies as being more convenience technologies and not safety features, as pointed out by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. Cavnu is paying for the design, permitting, and construction in I-94, as well as providing the pilot project's digital infrastructure. The pilot is a 3-mile technology-enabled express lane. It will be used for testing a combination of physical and digital infrastructure to improve highway safety and expand the benefits of connected and automated vehicles. We've talked about this, and we've talked about it as far back as 2018 with activity primarily by Ford, BMW, and Audi to get what they call vehicle-to-vehicle communication, or V2V. This is what they call V2I, which is vehicle to infrastructure, or infrastructure to vehicle in this case. The lane will be open to all road users except semi-trucks, which will continue to use the right 2 lanes. There will be flexible posts separating the middle and far left lane for vehicle testing during off-peak hours. The digital infrastructure poles with cameras, radar sensors, and wireless radio equipment are being installed in the median of I-94. According to the Michigan Department of Transportation, no personal data will be collected during testing. All data collected is for evaluation of safety mobility technologies. That's what they say. We will see. What I'm more concerned about is what would happen if vehicles in the other lane, if a vehicle goes off the road into the median strip and hits any of this equipment. How will it impact their ability to collect data? Is this equipment hardened towards just normal traffic wear and tear, debris which flies and might strike it, snow and ice, a plow going by, plow blade down, throwing a chunk of ice at it? I wonder. And not to mention road salt, because I'm going to tell you, Michigan believes in road salt. They do, heavy. So I would be curious, not so much at the data that it may generate, because Michigan's not the first state to do this. Iowa actually had a pilot a few years back. But I'd be more concerned about the durability in the day-to-day through all 4 seasons, rainy season, particularly winter. Winter is tough up in Michigan, and they get a lot of snow, and they get ice, and they get the nasty. And I'd be very curious of how this equipment might weather all of that. Thought you might want to know. Let's talk about the Ford Motor Company while we're on a roll here. Now, I've talked a lot about the EV industry, and I still think for the long run, EVs are an excellent idea once they get a variety of challenges, and I've reported those challenges here, worked out. In the case of EV sales slowing, and I've gotten a lot of pushback from some listeners about how EVs are dead, nobody wants them, the government's forcing us to take them. Let me give you a little balance, because I'm accused of not being balanced here, but let me give you a little balance. Ford Motor Company was looking at converting a plant in Oakville, Ontario, Canada, to EV production. Instead, the automaker is going to convert that plant and spend $3 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars, to convert it to Super Duty manufacturing. Now, the Ford Super Duty lineup is anything above an F-250, F-350, F-450. It is both prosumer and commercial use. These are the heavy duty end of the light duty pickups, where they just use it for heavy work, towing, construction, things of that nature. Heavy duty farming, if you're towing heavy stuff, that end. The reason why the Ford Motor Company is doing this is, according to the officials at Ford, they can't build enough Super Duties. They're short. They've got several plants building them now. They can't build enough. This is one of the advantages of the ramp up in all the infrastructure construction now just starting as a result of recent legislation over the last few years. The upshot of that is the construction companies and the powers that be that build this stuff need more trucks to facilitate the building of this stuff. So the number is actually $2.3 billion to build F Super Duties at Oakville Assembly in Ontario, and that will be in 2026. It will include installing new assembly and stamping equipment to initially boost heavy truck production by 100,000 trucks a year. The total with the supporting plants would come to $3 billion, and we'll cover that in a minute. They're going to build these trucks in addition to Oakville, Ohio Assembly, Kentucky Truck, where they're building them now. According to Jim Farley, demand for Super Duty trucks is currently outpacing the company's production capacity. I bring this up because I want to point out that not everything the automakers are doing is EVs no matter what. Here's a case where the automakers actually spending hard money, big money, billions of dollars to expand an end of the industry that, honestly, between you and me, may actually resist the conversion to EVs because of the nature of how these trucks are used. That, honestly, for the foreseeable future, big gasoline engines and diesel engines on the F2, 3, and 450 side is probably the best application for what these are needed for. Super Duty is a viable tool for business and people around the world, and even with our Kentucky truck plant, Ohio assembly plant running flat out, we cannot meet demand. And that is straight from Ford CEO Jim Farley. So in case you were wondering, no, the automakers are not all EVs or nothing. Here's a case where they're expanding Super Duty production. drones, fuel cells, electricity, and now solar-powered planes. Welcome to the future. You are listening to the Tech Mobility Show.
Are you tired of juggling multiple apps and platforms for meetings, webinars, and staying connected? Look no further than AONmeetings.com, the all-in-one browser-based platform that does it all. With AON Meetings, you can effortlessly communicate with clients, host virtual meetings and webinars, and stay in touch with family and friends, all in one place and for one price. Here's the best part. You can enjoy a 30-day free trial. It's time to simplify your life and boost your productivity. AONmeetings.com, where innovation meets connection. Get started today and revolutionize the way you communicate.
Social media is the main place to be these days, and we are no exception. I'm Ken Chester, the Tech Mobility Show. If you enjoy my program, then you will also enjoy my weekly Facebook videos. From my latest vehicle reviews to timely commentary of a variety of mobility and technology-related topics, these short features are designed to inform and delight you. Be sure to watch, like, and follow us on Facebook. You can find us by typing the Tech Mobility Show in the search bar. Be sure to subscribe to our Facebook page. Social media is the place to be these days, and we're no exception. I'm Ken Chester of the Tech Mobility Show. If you enjoy my program, then you will also enjoy my weekly Instagram videos. From the latest vehicle reviews to timely commentary on a variety of mobility and technology-related topics, these short features are designed to inform and delight you. Be sure to watch, like, and follow us on Instagram. You can find us by typing the Tech Mobility Show in the search bar. For those of you that listen to podcasts, we have just the one for you. Hi, I'm Ken Chester. Tech Mobility Topics is a podcast where I upload topic-specific videos each week. Shorter than the full show, these bite-sized programs are just the thing, particularly if you're interested in a particular topic covered on the weekly radio show. From Apple Podcast to iHeartRadio and many podcast platforms in between, we got you covered. Just enter Tech Mobility Topics in the search bar wherever you listen to podcasts.
Sophisticated engineering has made Lincoln Continental a surprisingly smart luxury sedan. In fact, it even knows a lot about you. It knows how long your legs are. It knows the sound of your voice.
Call Tom.
Thank you. Why, with its load-leveling suspension, Continental even knows exactly how much you weigh. But don't worry, it also knows how to stay quiet.
The 1994 Lincoln Continental, did you notice a full 13 years before the invention of the iPhone that some versions of the flip phone, of the casual cell phone, the simple and fairly dumb at that time because it was not internet connected, that it did have voice activation? Even that surprised me. I didn't realize that they had that level of sophistication in a phone that could do little else. Now today, you would not imagine your phone not being able to do a whole myriad of things, from being an alarm clock, to being a video recorder, to being a voice recorder, to being a timer, to being an internet device, to being a hotspot. It does all of these things and so much more depending on the apps you download. Who would have thunk it, that this little thing in your pocket would be so powerful? But then again, in Lincoln, who knew? Imagine airplanes powered only by energy from the sun, with some so light they could be launched from the ground by hand. Still others gathered in giant parking lots in the stratosphere. That technology is being developed right now. This is topic A. I think the day of a commercial aircraft being completely solar powered is probably far enough in the future that none of us currently breathing will see it. However, there is applications that may be sooner rather than later relative to matching autonomous capabilities with solar power. And there's a whole raft of things that a whole number of avionic companies are looking at. Those types of aircraft being developed right now that are bringing the dream of solar-powered flight closer to reality, with planes that act very differently from the jetliners of today. Let me give you an example. Can you imagine a plane up there in the stratosphere that's recording data maybe halfway around the world, in a sunny clime where it could be up there for months, relatively unattended, gathering data. A number of companies feel that this may be the missing link between the need to have a base to do internet access or survey a damaged area or provide cell phone access or connectivity in areas of storm or anything like that that had been ravaged or tornado, where they could take it, park it over an area for a while, let it get energy from the sun, do its job, and then when it was done, move it somewhere else. I mean, we've talked about electric planes, we've talked about virtual takeoff and landing vehicles, but yeah, solar-powered planes. These prototypes, most of which operate without humans, could lead to new alternatives for aerial surveillance and high-risk missions and emergency telecommunications in disaster zones, industry executives say. Aviation giants, telecommunication companies, venture investors, military agencies are already spending millions of dollars developing these planes and technologies. The military part shouldn't be of any surprise to anybody, because if you can have something that stealth that doesn't require refueling, that theoretically, if it's in a sunny clime that is sunny most of the time, could stay out there indefinitely, doing whatever it's doing, inexpensively. Pretty cool. It's like in the early days of aviation, as companies, governments, and investors try to figure out what these planes can do and what could be economically viable. And this is Eric Raymond, a solar aircraft designer, a glider pilot who started experimenting with solar power flight in 1979. He believes the potential is there even after all these years. The way that it works, common sense, solar aircraft typically soak up the sun's energy via panels that cover the wings and sometimes the body, sides, and even the tail. The advantage of solar power is it's free and emissionless, much more environmentally friendly than burning jet fuel. Honestly, almost anything is more friendly to the environment than burning jet fuel. A solar plane never needs refueling, and in theory, it could stay in the air as long as the sun is shining. That brings perpetual flight within reach if the solar is paired with batteries charged during the day and power the aircraft and its payload at night. Advances in battery technology and costs have finally made it feasible to power a solar plane for longer distances or through the night, solar aircraft executives say, albeit with much less power than jet fuel pound for pound. That means, again, common sense, today's solar aircraft are extremely lightweight and slow. That's what you give up. In order to get the solar power to maintain energy, they're not going to be setting any speed records anytime soon. Many fly around the speed of a slow car. Sounds like maybe 30, 40 miles an hour. They have trouble withstanding bad weather. Well, remember, they're light. And if they're that light, they could be easily buffeted by winds, damaged by hail, or some such. Stability would be a problem. Most can't carry heavy loads. Again, in order for them to get the weight ratio to support flying, they have to be incredibly light, because solar power, even though it generates power and may be stored in the batteries, doesn't store that much. It's not going to use a lot. So this has to be extremely miserly in the use of its power for propulsion and everything else that it's designed to do. A domestic hairdryer is probably consuming the same amount of power that we're using during the night to fly the airplane, said David Corfield. He heads the unit of the UK defense and aerospace contractor BAE Systems, and they're building a solar and battery powered aircraft called the Phasa 35. The planes have some advantages over current aircraft used for services like surveillance. Most of the companies trying to commercialize solar planes are building aircraft that are lightweight, autonomous, and can fly at altitudes and for lengths of time that humans can't tolerate. Unlike balloons, solar planes are steerable, a big advantage for monitoring a target on the ground or providing telecom coverage without being blown off course. They're also cheaper and closer to Earth than satellites, putting them in a sweet spot for services that can't currently be offered by either executives in charge of solar aircraft projects say. The planes can capture higher resolution photos or videos than satellites, or deliver broadband internet from the air, another thing satellites can't do. Given the improvements, the phenomenal improvements in video, I mean, even the cheapest phone now takes phenomenal video. Who knew? It just gets better and better. Executives envision programming them to fly to the other side of the globe on surveillance missions lasting months, making them safer and longer-term alternative to monitoring by piloted planes. Solar aircraft could be sent to disaster zones to provide emergency communications that have flown away when they are no longer needed. Who knew that in the future, solar aircraft could be added to the mix of everything else that's up there? Oh my. The feds are being asked to investigate flagrant abuse of personal privacy by the automakers. This is the Tech Mobility Show. Do you listen to podcasts? Seems that most people do. Hi, I'm Ken Chester, host of the Tech Mobility Show. If you missed any of our weekly episodes on the radio, our podcast is a great way to listen. You can find the Tech Mobility Podcast just about anywhere you can enjoy podcasts. Be sure to follow us. From Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and many platforms in between, we are there. Just enter the Tech Mobility Podcast in the search bar wherever you listen to podcasts. Social media, it's the place to be. We're no exception. Hi, I'm Ken Chester, host of the Tech Mobility Show. Several times a week, I post to TikTok several of the topics that I cover on my weekly radio show. It's another way to keep up on mobility, technology, news, and information. I've built quite a library of short videos for your viewing pleasure, so be sure to watch, like, and subscribe. That's the Tech Mobility Show on TikTok. Check it out. Two U.S. senators asking the Federal Trade Commission to investigate automakers for sharing customer data, saying they did so without explicit permission, representing an outrageous manipulation of consumers and a flagrant abuse of privacy. This is Topic B. With the coming of more and more technology to the vehicle, automakers, and I'm thinking of Stellantis in particular, have long bragged about the ability to provide customized services to consumers in their vehicles, and that software-based services in vehicle could generate billions of dollars towards the end of this decade. In fact, they were counting on that as being another revenue stream beyond what they're doing now. Think OnStar or SiriusXM radio as the beginning of this. And they were looking at so much more. We talked about it. It's been a few years on this show where automakers, for a minute, were actually thinking about allowing you access to certain services or attributes of your vehicle, turning them on and off. BMW even went as far as saying, well, we could offer you heated seats in the winter for a price. And obviously there's pushback. If you're paying that kind of money for BMW and you expect heated seats, have always had heated seats, why am I paying extra for it seasonally? And besides, there may be a cold day in the spring. I might want to turn them on. I'm like, no. And a lot of people pushed back, and you notice that those plans quietly went away. Although I fully expect there may be opportunities like boosting the range or power of your EV. I think that may still be a service. I know Mercedes-Benz offers that now on certain EV models, that you could increase your range for a price. I would expect more of that, and that makes sense. But to collect data, somebody said if it's free, then you're the product. And I think this is the issue. At risk is that automakers offered consumers some services under the guise of this will improve this for you or give you a better rate or, coach your driving, whatever. What they did not tell the consumer is what they were going to do with the data they collected. And that's the problem. They did not necessarily, by nature, tell the consumer or give the consumer to opt out of selling their information. Therefore, consumers opting into these programs willingly may not have realized that their data was being aggregated and sold without their knowledge or consent, hence why these senators were asking the FTC to look into it. And they named names. They named General Motors, Honda, and Hyundai specifically. And they said may have shared consumer data with a data broker unlawfully. Automakers either obscured customer participation in data or obtained consent in ways that were misleading, they said. And then the data broker sold reports on driver behavior to insurance companies, which sometimes raised driver insurance costs. And of course, the automakers deny the allegations. Could you imagine that they aggregate this data, and you're part of the aggregation, they sell it to a broker, the broker turns around and sells it to your insurance company. And as a result of the information, which includes your data, your rates went up, and you don't know why. Yeah, that's not fair. And honestly, you should have the right. But I'm naive. I would like to think that in a perfect world someday, there would be some center place where I could go and set my parameters one time, and anybody that wants to use data regarding me would have to correspond to how I chose what my profile looked like. That yes, yes, and yes for this, no, 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 and no for that. But that's in a world that we're not in, unfortunately, and not even in Europe, because in Europe, and I keep talking about this, but I love it, it's called the right to be forgotten. You can tell all these data companies that want to use you and your data that not only don't want you to use it, I want you to forget I even exist, meaning that I may use your service, but at the end of it, delete all my data. It's called the right to be forgotten, and I love it. The problematic practices we have uncovered and documented in this letter are likely just the tip of the iceberg, and that's the letter to the FTC, said the lawmakers. It's particularly insulting for automakers that are selling cars for tens of thousands of dollars, then to squeeze out a few additional pennies of profit with consumers' private data. The letter is the latest in a laundry list of data privacy woes for automakers. And bear in mind, this is from Automotive News, an industry trade publication that I'm reading from. Last July, the California Privacy Protection Agency's Enforcement Division said it was reviewing data privacy practices for connected vehicles. The senators wrote to the FTC regarding a different vehicle privacy matter, the disclosure of location data to law enforcement agencies in April. And in June, the Texas Attorney General's office said it would investigate automakers for secretly collecting mass amounts of data about drivers and selling it. Here's the thing. Most of us, to be exact, 95% of Americans, believe they should own their own vehicle data. I am one of those. Do not sell my data. I'm not down with that. The focus on consumer privacy by regulatory agencies illustrates a turning point. About the rich, automakers have made lofty revenue projections. They have. About the riches to be found in the sale of connected vehicle data, and have largely sought to ignore the fact that consumers do not want their data to be sold, full stop. Now regulators are taking steps to yank automakers out of their daydreams, having gone to battle with big tech over similar data protection issues. A touchstone of this program is consumer privacy and consumer rights. It's not okay for big tech or the automakers to unwillingly and deceptively use my information about where I am, how I operate my vehicle without my permission or my consent. No, it's not okay. And at the very least, if you want it, you should offer to pay me for it because you're getting paid for it. And you need to be more transparent about these systems that you're trying to convince me to opt into, particularly if you're collecting data and I don't need 14 pages of boilerplate. How about plain English in one page? That would really work. I don't think that the lure of connected services data, even if it's anonymized and sold, is going to fly, which means automakers and their investors and the marketplace will have to adjust to a reality where all this money they thought they were going to make isn't necessarily going to happen. Now, to be fair, there are opportunities and there are situations where I think that they could offer services that I would be willing to pay for, particularly on the EV side, extending range, speeding up charging capabilities or other vehicle capabilities that I don't have now or may not have existed at the time my vehicle was built. But you could update my car through an over-the-air update. Yeah, I consider that. But as far as me as the information that you're selling, not so much. And I really think we need stronger laws anyway regarding our personal privacy in this tech-rich, data-rich world we live in. We just do. Coming up next, Brazil and farmland going back in the forest. It's money, y'all. This is the Tech Mobility Show. To learn more about the Tech Mobility Show, start by visiting our website. Hi, I'm Ken Chester, host of the Tech Mobility Show. The website is a treasure trove of information about me and the show, as well as where to find it on the radio across the country. Keep up with the happenings at the Tech Mobility Show by visiting techmobility.show. That's techmobility.show. You can also drop us a line at talk@techmobility.show. Did you know that Tech Mobility has a YouTube channel? Hi, I'm Ken Chester, host of the Tech Mobility Show. Each week, I upload a few short videos of some of the hot topics that I cover during my weekly radio program. I've designed these videos to be informative and entertaining. It's another way to keep up on current mobility and technology news and information. Be sure to watch, like, and subscribe to my channel. That's the Tech Mobility Show on YouTube. Check it out.
Are you tired of juggling multiple apps and platforms for meetings, webinars, and staying connected? Look no further than aonmeetings.com, the all-in-one browser-based platform that does it all. With AON Meetings, you can effortlessly communicate with clients, host virtual meetings and webinars, and stay in touch with family and friends, all in one place and for one price. Here's the best part. You can enjoy a 30-day free trial. It's time to simplify your life and boost your productivity. aonmeetings.com, where innovation meets connection. Get started today and revolutionize the way you communicate.
Social media is the place to be these days, and we're no exception. I'm Ken Chester of the Tech Mobility Show. If you enjoy my program, then you will also enjoy my weekly Instagram videos. From the latest vehicle reviews to timely commentary on a variety of mobility and technology-related topics, these short features are designed to inform and delight you. Be sure to watch, like, and follow us on Instagram. You can find us by typing the Tech Mobility Show in the search bar. For those of you who believe that climate change is a hoax, I'm going to save you some time. I'm going to keep you from getting angry. You can skip this segment. I'm going to just tell you up front, this is a segment you can skip. But if you care about the planet, if you care about where we're going, if you're concerned about extreme weather, being more extreme more often, maybe having been a victim of extreme weather, then yes, you want to hear this. It's well known that the Brazilian rainforest, the tropical rainforest in Brazil, is the largest carbon sink in the world. What that means is that dense, thick underbrush and all of those plants absorbs more carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere than any other place on Earth, meaning the health and well-being of the tropical rainforest in Brazil is vitally important to maintaining or reducing climate change across the entire planet. In recent years, it's also well known that Brazilian farmers have been cutting down wide swaths of the forest for crops and livestock raising. In fact, losing so much of it that there was starting to be a concern about losing this large carbon sink and what that means to the planet as a whole. As with all things tech, efforts to plant new trees in the tropical forests of Brazil, believe it or not, is attracting investment. And it's good for the planet. This is Topic C. How does this work? You have heard of carbon offsets. That is, companies are paying so much a ton per carbon they produce as an offset to create situations where it will take that much carbon out of the atmosphere. and there's an actual market for this. What that means is new investment is flowing into carbon offset projects that regrow native vegetation, transforming swaths of the Brazilian farmland back into tropical forests. They are paying to turn it back to the way it was. That's a good thing. Let me give you a number. 333,592. That is acres of farmland, an area nearly 23 times the size of Manhattan, said to be bought, leased, or otherwise invested in and reforested by a company called BTG TIG in partnership with the nonprofit Conservation International. This, my fellow citizens of the planet, is a good thing. Anytime we can restore natural habitat, not a man-made solution, but natural vegetation and native habitat. And native is the important part because that supports biodiversity and there's so many other advantages to biodiversity relative to our planet. And the Brazilian rainforest is one of the most biodiverse ecosystems in the world because certain plants support certain critters which support other things, and it goes up the chain. And we humans eventually benefit. In this example, Brazil's BTG Pactual Timberland Investment Group announced a deal recently to provide Microsoft with 8 million tons of carbon offsets through 2043 in what would be the biggest contract of this kind. What this means is, in very simple terms, Microsoft is paying them to plant vegetation to take carbon out of the air, to offset the carbon that they estimate they will produce through their processes, either in power generation or usage and a whole bunch of things. But basically, whatever carbon they feel their business will generate, they're spending money to remove 8 million tons of carbon out of the atmosphere. Let me give you a comparison. It sounds like a lot, right? And while it's the biggest contract, it still pales in what we put in the atmosphere right now. Every single year, the world puts 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every single year. 8 million's a lot, but honestly, it's still just a drop in the bucket. Now, as you might expect, some people have complained that the process for offsets isn't as rigorous as it should be, and that some companies have been accused of greenwashing for buying carbon offsets without making other changes. Carbon offsets are a great start, but please understand, it's a start. Companies have to do that and more if we're going to get extreme weather that's more extreme, more often, under control. The administration recently issued guidelines for the voluntary carbon market in a bid to bolster its integrity. In other words, that people are doing exactly what they say they're doing. They're buying what they said, and offsets are actually getting produced in planting the necessary vegetation. Efforts to regrow vegetation are often easier to model than carbon projects focused on existing greenery, according to many investors and environmentalists. Brazil, with its vast territory and many degraded areas, is at the center of such efforts. I'm reading that again. Brazil, with its vast territory and many degraded areas, is at the center of such efforts. Like I said at the top of this segment, hundreds of thousands of acres had been cut down, removed, cleared for farmland and grazing in the last 15, 20 years. In fact, there was some astronomical number of acres falling every day for a while. So for the fact that they're attempting to reverse this movement is a good thing. Microsoft's latest Brazil project aims to buy up farm and pasture and recover it with trees, with half terrain going to native species and the rest to timber trees. This is important. Timber cutting, which would involve only trees 14 years and older, is the key to financial viability. They said that Global prices for forestry credits typically range from $20 to $40 a piece, far more than those of forest conservation projects, which recently traded at a volume-weighted quarterly price of $4.10. Still, reforestation projects face their own hazards, wildfires, illegal logging, and others that could still end up destroying the forest. But honestly, folks, it's still worth trying. It's still important. And anything you can do, particularly where you can have such a big impact because of Brazil's just size and the damage that was created down there, and you can make such a big impact, it still takes time. It'll take years for these trees to grow. Planted this year, 14 years out is 14 years out. So you won't even start to hit stride probably till 5 or 6 years in when these things start to grow and start to get some heft to them. But it's still necessary. We've come to the end of our visit. Be sure to join me again next time right here. This has been the TechMobility Show.
The TechMobility Show is a copywritten production of TechMobility Productions, Incorporated. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or any other use is prohibited without the written consent of TechMobility Productions, Incorporated.
For those of you that listen to podcasts, we have just the one for you. Hi, I'm Ken Chester. Tech Mobility Topics is a podcast where I upload topic-specific videos each week. Shorter than the full show, these bite-sized programs are just the thing, particularly if you're interested in a particular topic covered on the weekly radio show. From Apple Podcast to iHeartRadio and many podcast platforms in between, we got you covered. Just enter Tech Mobility Topics in the search bar wherever you listen to podcasts. Social media. It's the place to be, and we're no exception. Hi, I'm Ken Chester, host of the Tech Mobility Show. Several times a week, I post to TikTok several of the topics that I cover on my weekly radio show. It's another way to keep up on mobility, technology, news, and information. I've built quite a library of short videos for your viewing pleasure, so be sure to watch, like, and subscribe. That's the Tech Mobility Show on TikTok. Check it out. To learn more about the Tech Mobility Show, start by visiting our website. Hi, I'm Ken Chester, host of the Tech Mobility Show. The website is a treasure trove of information about me and the show, as well as where to find it on the radio across the country. Keep up with the happenings at the Tech Mobility Show by visiting techmobility.show. That's techmobility.show. You can also drop us a line at talk@techmobility.show. Do you listen to podcasts? Seems that most people do. Hi, I'm Ken Chester, host of the Tech Mobility Show. If you've missed any of our weekly episodes on the radio, our podcast is a great way to listen. You can find the Tech Mobility Podcast just about anywhere you can enjoy podcasts. Be sure to follow us. From Apple Podcast to iHeartRadio and many platforms in between, we are there. Just enter the Tech Mobility Podcast in the search bar wherever you listen to podcasts.